There's a saying among truckers: if you can't afford a motel, sleep with one eye open. I never used to take it seriously, not until that night. I had been on the road for 16 hours, running on fumes and bad gas station coffee, when I finally pulled into a rest stop off the interstate. It was one of those small, dimly lit lots with a handful of trucks parked in a row, their engines humming in the quiet. A single streetlight flickered near the vending machines, the kind of place that felt safe enough but had an edge of something else, something unsettled. I killed the engine, locked the doors, and checked my sleeper cab. Everything was as I left it. Blanket crumpled, duffel bag shoved into the corner, curtain tied back against the wall. Good enough. I kicked off my boots, stretched out in the bunk, and was asleep before I could think too hard about anything. At some point in the night, I woke up, not because of a noise, not because of a dream, just that feeling, like I wasn't alone. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling of the cab, listening. The lot was silent except for the occasional low rumble of another trucker's engine. Probably nothing. Maybe I was just jumpy. I rolled over, about to go back to sleep. Then I saw it. My curtain. It was closed. I sat up fast, heart hammering. I knew for a fact I had left it open. I always did. Something about sleeping in a closed space made me uneasy, and besides, there was no reason for it to be shut, unless someone had been in here. I grabbed my tire iron from under the bunk, my breath coming faster. My hand shook as I reached for the curtain, and then, in one quick motion, I yanked it open. Nothing. The sleeper cab was empty. My bag, my blanket, everything exactly where I left it. I exhaled hard, sitting back on the mattress. Maybe I had closed it without realizing. Maybe I had been more exhausted than I thought. I didn't want to believe the alternative, that someone had been in here, that they might still be. I checked the doors, locked, checked under the bunk, empty. Eventually, I convinced myself it was all in my head. I didn't sleep much after that. Morning came and I was still rattled. I got out of the cab, stretching stiff limbs, trying to shake the feeling that something was off. Other truckers were moving around the lot, grabbing coffee, checking tires. Normal morning routine. I should have let it go, but something nagged at me. I had a dash cam, one that recorded overnight. Maybe it would show me what I wanted to see. Nothing. Proof that I had imagined it all. I climbed back into the cab, pulled up the footage, and scrolled to around the time I had woken up. I hit play. The rest stop looked normal, dimly lit under the flickering streetlight. My truck sat still, the cab dark. Hours passed in seconds as the footage sped forward. Then, around 3:30 a.m., the screen flickered. Something moved. I slowed the playback, my stomach twisting. A figure, approaching my truck. The person was tall, wearing dark clothes. Their face was obscured, but the way they moved was wrong. Deliberate, smooth. They stopped outside my door, stood there for a long time. Then, without hesitation, they opened it. I paused the video. The door hadn't been unlocked. I was sure of it, but they had gotten in. I forced myself to hit play again, watching as the figure climbed into the cab, moved quietly toward the sleeper, disappeared behind the curtain, and then nothing. No movement, no exit. The figure never came out, but I had checked. I had looked. The sleeper had been empty, hadn't it? I sat there, hands cold, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't finish my coffee, didn't bother with breakfast. I just turned on the engine and got the hell out of there. I still don't know what happened that night, but I check my doors a little more carefully now, and I never sleep with my curtain closed. There's something about driving long stretches of empty highway that does strange things to your mind. Maybe it's the silence, or maybe it's the fact that you can go for miles without seeing another soul, just your own headlights cutting through the dark. I've been a long-haul trucker for 15 years. I've seen weird things on the road. Cars abandoned with their doors wide open. figures standing too close to the shoulder in the middle of the night, gas stations that look open until you pull in and realize they've been closed for years. But nothing ever stuck with me quite like that voice on the radio. I was heading west, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, the kind of highway that doesn't even have mile markers. Just blacktop and an empty sky. I had the CB radio on, mostly for company, listening to truckers chat about road conditions and the best places to stop for coffee. Then the static cut out and I heard it. A woman's voice, low, calm, but desperate. "Please, if anyone can hear me, I need help. I'm trapped." I straightened up fast, reached for the receiver. I asked where she was, what she meant. Silence. Then another trucker's voice broke in. Older guy, gravelly voice. "That voice again," he said. "You heard it too, huh?" I asked what he meant. "She comes through sometimes. Always the same thing, asking for help. But she never answers when you talk back." I frowned, adjusting the dial. I told him I thought maybe it was a distress signal. Maybe someone was really in trouble. The guy let out a dry chuckle. "You want to go looking for her? Be my guest. Just don't say I didn't warn you." Then he signed off. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I figured it was a prank, some idiot messing around with a transmitter. But then I picked up a faint signal, and it was coming from a place just a few miles ahead. An old truck stop. I pulled in just before 2 a.m. The place had been abandoned for years. The sign was rusted over, the windows smashed. The fuel pumps were stripped down to their bones, the kind of place scavengers had picked clean long ago. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds. But I wasn't alone. There was a truck at the far end of the lot, or what was left of one. The cab door hung open, the windshield clouded with grime. It looked like it had been sitting there for decades, forgotten. And from inside, crackle, a voice. "Please, if anyone can hear me, I need help." I stopped cold. The CB radio inside that abandoned truck was still on, still broadcasting. I climbed up slowly, trying to ignore the pounding in my chest. The cab smelled of dust and something rotten. The seat cushions were torn, stuffing spilling out. The dashboard was covered in dirt, but the radio still flickered weakly, static hissing from the speaker. And then, sitting on the dash, plastic card, an old driver's ID. The picture was faded, but I could still make out the face of a woman. The same woman whose voice had been coming through the radio. My hands went clammy. I wiped the card clean with my sleeve, hoping I was imagining things, but her name was still there, burned into the plastic. I knew that name. I'd seen it before, on a missing persons report. Years ago, a trucker had disappeared on this very highway. No one ever found her. I didn't realize I was backing away until I nearly fell off the cab step. I turned fast, scanning the lot, suddenly sure I wasn't alone. But there was nothing, just silence. I didn't stay to figure out more. I climbed back in my rig, locked the doors, and got the hell out of there. I still hear her sometimes. That voice. "Please, if anyone can hear me, I need help." Always the same words. Always the same calm, desperate tone. I don't answer anymore, and I don't dare check my CB radio near that stretch of highway. If you're drawn to tales like these, consider subscribing to Spectral for more chilling entries waiting to be uncovered. And if you have your own haunting story that you'd like featured in an upcoming compilation, we'd love to hear it. Just email us at spectralentries@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the video. There's a rule most truckers learn early on: stick to the main roads. Shortcuts? Not worth it. They'll take you down routes where the pavement disappears, where bridges have long since collapsed, where there's no cell service for miles. But that night, I broke the rule, and I damn near didn't make it back. I was on the last stretch of a long haul, somewhere deep in the Midwest, cutting through farmland and empty highways. I was exhausted but trying to push through. I had a delivery scheduled for the morning, and stopping for the night would have put me behind. That's when I saw the backup ahead. Brake lights in the distance, a long line of stopped cars, and a bright orange detour sign flashing on the side of the road. Construction. I cursed under my breath. I wasn't in the mood to sit in traffic for an hour, so I did what every trucker knows not to do. I pulled up my GPS, looking for another way through, and there it was. A small, unnamed road cutting straight across the area, avoiding the highway completely. It looked paved, looked like it connected back up with the main route further down. I took it. At first, it wasn't so bad. A little rough, a little narrow, but it was paved, just like it had looked on the map. My headlights stretched ahead, showing nothing but empty road and the occasional tree. But after a few miles, things started to change. The pavement cracked, then disappeared completely, replaced by uneven dirt and patches of gravel. The trees pressed in closer, thick and overgrown, blocking out what little moonlight there was. And then my GPS froze. The little blue arrow that had been guiding me forward stopped moving. The screen glitched, flickered, then went black. No service, no map, no way to tell where I was or where the road actually led. I should have turned around right then, but the road was too narrow. No space to back up, no way to maneuver my rig around without getting stuck. So I kept going. Then I saw the gas station. It sat just off the road, tucked between the trees. Old, run down, wrong. The kind of place that didn't belong in the middle of nowhere. The building was dark, the windows covered in grime. The gas pumps were rusted, the numbers on them too faded to read. No signs, no advertisements, nothing to indicate anyone had been there in years. And standing near the entrance, a man, still, silent, watching. A bad feeling crawled up my spine. I slowed down, not stopping, just easing off the gas, trying to get a better look. Maybe he was stranded, maybe he needed help. Then I saw them, more figures stepping out of the shadows. They came from behind the building, from the tree line, from nowhere, a dozen at least, standing still, watching. My hands clenched the wheel. My instincts were screaming now, every nerve in my body telling me to leave. I glanced at my mirrors, trying to find a way out, trying to figure out if I could turn around. And that's when the first man took a step forward. Not fast, not running, just a single, slow step. The others followed. A deep, crawling sense of dread settled in my chest. I threw the truck into reverse. My tires spun against the loose gravel as I backed down the narrow road, trying not to jackknife my trailer. The figures kept moving, stepping closer, their faces still hidden in the dark. And then, one of them smiled. I don't know how I saw it, don't know how the light caught just right, but I did. And it wasn't a normal smile. It was wrong. Too wide. Too knowing. I floored it. I kept reversing until I saw a break in the trees. A dirt path that looked just wide enough to turn onto. I took it. Didn't care if I bottomed out. Didn't care if my rig got scratched to hell. I just needed to get off that road. The last thing I saw in my mirror, those figures standing at the edge of the road, still watching. I didn't stop driving until I hit the highway again. Didn't slow down until I saw real lights, gas stations, rest stops, the comforting glow of civilization. Only then did I pull over, hands still shaking, my heart hammering in my chest. I checked my phone. Service was back. I pulled up the GPS, trying to see where the hell I had just been. But that road, it wasn't on the map. I looked up the area, searched for anything. A gas station, a landmark, something that explained what I had seen. And that's when I found it. A news article. That stretch of road had been closed for years. Washed out, considered impassable. And that gas station? It had burned down in the 90s. They found bodies inside. And outside, people who had disappeared trying to take the same shortcut I had. I don't take back roads anymore. And I never ever take shortcuts.